The third labor of Heracles, the Ceryneian Hind. Hello and welcome to this video about the third labor of Heracles. The capture of the Ceryneian Hind, Heracles, also known as Hercules, was a legendary hero of Greek mythology. Famous for his incredible strength and courage, he had to perform 12 impossible tasks, known as the labors of Heracles, as a punishment for killing his own children in a fit of madness. In this video, we will explore the story of his third labor, the hunt for the Ceryneian Hind, a sacred deer with golden horns and bronze hooves. Dedicated to the goddess Artemis, the Ceryneian Hind was a marvelous creature. Swift as the wind and able to outrun an arrow, it lived in the region of Cerynea, a mountain in Arcadia, where it grazed on the grass and drank from the river Ladon. The hind was a favorite of Artemis, the goddess of hunting and wild animals, who had given it to the nymph Taygete as a gift. Taygete, in turn, had devoted the hind to Artemis after she was transformed back from a deer by the goddess. The hind was so precious to Artemis that she would not allow anyone to harm it or capture it. Heracles, however, was ordered by his cousin and master Eurystheus, the king of Mycenae, to bring the hind alive to him as his third labor. Eurystheus hoped that Heracles would either fail in this task, or incur the wrath of Artemis for violating her sacred animal. Heracles accepted the challenge and set off to find the hind. He searched for a whole year, following the tracks of the deer across mountains, plains, rivers, and even to the far north, to the land of the Hyperboreans, where he brought back an olive branch that later grew into the sacred olive tree of Olympia. But no matter how fast he ran, he could not catch up with the hind, which always escaped his grasp and ran back to the south. There are different versions of how Heracles finally managed to capture the hind. According to one version, he trapped it with a net. According to another, he caught it while it was sleeping. According to a third, he exhausted it with his relentless pursuit. According to Apollodorus, the most popular version, the hind reached the mountain of Artemisium, and then descended to the river Ladon. When the hind was about to cross the river, Heracles shot it with a precise arrow, wounding it in the leg, and then grabbed it and tied it up. On his way back to Mycenae, Heracles met Apollo and Artemis, who were angry with him for injuring their sacred animal. Heracles explained to them that he was acting under the command of Eurystheus, whom he had to obey because of the will of the gods. He also promised to return the hind to Artemis after he showed it to Eurystheus. The gods accepted his apology and let him go. According to some archaeological evidence, there was another version of the myth, which did not survive in the writings of the mythographers, according to which Heracles had to fight with Apollo over the hind. But this is not confirmed by any literary source. Heracles brought the hind alive to Mycenae and presented it to Eurystheus, who was amazed by the sight of the golden horned deer. He wanted to keep it for himself, but Heracles reminded him of his promise to Artemis and released the hind, which ran back to its mistress. Thus, Heracles completed his third labor, proving his skill as a hunter and his respect for the gods. Thank you for watching this video about the third labor of Heracles, the capture of the Ceryneian Hind. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos about Greek mythology. See you next time. The second labor of Heracles, the Lernaean Hydra. This video brings you an account of the second labor of Heracles from the series Legends and Myths of Ancient Greece. The main goal of this presentation is to describe the story and the significance of this mythological episode. The Lernaean Hydra was a fearsome creature that terrorized the people and the animals of the region of Lerna. It had 9 heads, one of which was immortal and the rest were mortal. The Hydra also had a poisonous breath and blood that could kill anyone who came in contact with it. Some versions of the myth say that the Hydra was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, 2 monstrous beings that represented the forces of chaos and evil. Other versions say that the Hydra was raised by Hera specifically to kill Heracles. Heracles set off to hunt the Hydra, accompanied by his loyal nephew Iolaus, who was his charioteer and companion in many of his adventures. They reached the swamp of Lerna and Heracles lured the Hydra out of its den by shooting flaming arrows at it. He then grabbed the Hydra and tried to smash its heads with his club. However, he soon realized that every time he cut off one head, 2 more would grow in its place. Moreover, the Hydra wrapped one of its coils around Heracles' foot and prevented him from escaping. To make matters worse, a giant crab came to the aid of the Hydra and started biting Heracles' foot. Heracles called for Iolaus to help him and they came up with a clever plan. Iolaus brought a torch and every time Heracles chopped off a head, Iolaus cauterized the wound with the fire, preventing the growth of new heads. They managed to destroy the 8 mortal heads, and then Heracles cut off the 9th, immortal head. He buried it under a heavy rock, as he could not kill it. He also crushed the crab with his foot. He then dipped his arrows in the Hydra's blood, thinking that this would make them more powerful and lethal. However, this proved to be a fatal mistake, as later on, one of these arrows wounded him and caused his death. The myth of the Ceryneian Hydra has a symbolic meaning and a moral lesson. It represents the struggle of the hero against the forces of evil and chaos, and the need to use both strength and intelligence to overcome them. It also shows that every action has consequences, and that sometimes the hero's own weapons can turn against him. The Hydra can also be seen as a metaphor for the problems and difficulties that people face in life, and that sometimes they multiply when they are not solved properly. To conclude, the second labor of Heracles was to slay the Ceryneian Hydra, a monstrous serpent with 9 heads that lived in the swamp of Lerna. Heracles, with the help of his nephew Iolaus, managed to defeat the Hydra by using fire to stop the regeneration of the heads. He also used the Hydra's blood to make his arrows more deadly, but this later caused his own death. The myth of the Hydra has a symbolic and moral meaning, as it shows the hero's struggle against evil and chaos, and the consequences of his actions.